everyone, and Happy New Year. It's good to be together for another year. Unfortunately, we have to start it off with some problems, but we're all here, and that's good. I want to welcome you on behalf of the team. We have with us, of course, Kathy Lee, the original, Jerome Roberts, the Philly Gator, and Gary Williams, the man about town. And today, Kathy is taking over our discussion. But before we do, I want you to think about something. Have we come out of the convent? No. But we're still in that, and we're still in so many things that have happened in the end of last year. But we're going to take care of them as best we can right here on I'm Just Saying. So, welcome. And this is a one that is going first to Kathy Lee. And we're going to be discussing something very dear to all of us, or should be dear to all of us, what's happening to our democracy. Kathy, welcome.
Hello, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. Happy New Year. Democracy. I've thought long and hard about this topic, and the question basically is our democracy in danger? Well, my question to everyone else is: have we ever really been a democracy? Because a democracy is a system of government that is basically run by the whole population or all of the eligible members of a state. And the word all eligible members is what makes it which really is what distinguishes whether or not we are a democracy or not. We are a representative democracy. We are a democratic republic. And we have a history in this country of always disenfranchising people of color, women, uh, even so called white men. And it's been a historical fact since the beginning and founding of this country that we have never really been a true democracy. Because the challenge is if it's controlled by the majority of its members, who decides who the members are in that specific group? It's like being in a union. If you're not in a union, you can't vote. So if you're not even considered a citizen like indigenous people that lived in this country, like um, um, Native Americans and Alaskan natives, and of course we know how we were treated being brought over here, and women, then who decides who's going to be voting? How do they maintain that power? And we've talked about systems before. And what's happening now is there's an assault on the voting rights once again of all of the people of this country. I should say, no, excuse me, certain people in this country, because it is to maintain the system that they have established since right here in Philadelphia since 1790. So I'm going to turn it over. Anyone else have anything else to add?
Well, yeah, Kathy Lee, you're absolutely right. The original founders of this country, the white males, said that white male property owners were the only people that had the right to vote. And that went on until post Civil War, when black men were given the right to vote. However, even though black men were given the right to vote, and there were major changes at the end of Reconstruction, those changes went away. And we've been in that kind of post Reconstruction era pretty much ever since. Voting rights have been an issue in this country forever, and it was demonstrated in 1965 when the Voting Rights Act was passed, and most recently, all of the bills in the Voting Rights Act have been taken away. Many of them have been taken away, and the rest of them are under assault. So you're right when you say we're a representative democracy. We're not a pure democracy, and this country is in for a little trouble. It's in for a little trouble in the upcoming 22 elections, and it'll be in trouble in the 24 elections. We'll see how it turns out.
I think,
Jerry?
folks,
Yeah, I have a different term for it. I call it global white male supremacy, and that's what I call it because that's really what it is. And Jerome was right. Heading towards the next election, I'm the way that things are going, the way that the Republicans what they call Republicans, Democrats. I think they're all the same. They're all taking money. I'm just saying. So, the way things are going, it seems like they're setting up stuff like I wouldn't be surprised if number 45 got back in. And I wouldn't be surprised is um, if there's a revolution in this country, uh, if he got back in. And because we saw what happened in January when the people attack a system that they so dearly loved. And it was it was like something out of a horror story. And so from that picture in my mind, I'm with you, Kathy Lee. I mean, is this democracy? Is this heritocracy? Is this what kind of name can we give it? But I know I can give it this title that of global white male supremacy. I know that that's the key to all of it,
Listen,
all of this.
I agree with you. We're very confused as to where we're living and what's happening to the thing that we call democracy. And January the 6th brought us right smack in its face. So we're going to have to make some choices. But facing us to make those choices is a thing called voting. And if we don't vote, we don't get what we want. So I think that that subject has to go with the idea of do we want democracy, how we're going to improve it, or how we're going to save it.
Yeah, but Trudy, I hear what everyone is saying, but you have to look at the system and you have to look at the way the system was established. And I mean, if you go all the way back to Greece, you're talking about um, we patterned, or the founding fathers used Greece as the foundation for setting up our alleged democracy. And because it had a written constitution, we have one in the rule of law. But the rule of law, when it's not applied equally across the entire spectrum, it's really null and void. And so we've had a system in this country, a government in this country, an alleged democracy that the people that set it up are totally afraid of. Because why would you exclude certain populations from participating in it? Because the whole thing is to maintain the system, the control. And when you look at things, I read something now where they had two charts. They looked at, well, grace. Let's just take the word grace. That's the example they used. And if you are in grace, you have health, wealth, you're white, and you're Christian. Those that are out of grace are diseased, impoverished, non white or black, and not Christian. And when you look at the foundations of the whole mindset of how the system was established around those things, you could even add white Protestant and male to that little Venn diagram, then you can see how this country and how the people like some people on Fox News and some of the other people like Bannon and those that led this insurrection, in their minds, they are actually protecting the democracy that has been in place or was in place for generations in this country. So let's not get it kind of twisted, because if we kick it up a notch, they are preserving the power for those that they deem to be in having grace, having the moral authority to rule this country and everyone in it. And so that's one of the reasons why they rebel. They're totally afraid of democracy. They're afraid of the indigenous people. They're afraid of African people, because there are no white or black people. And it's time to stop using, in my opinion, white supremacy, because you're giving it codification. You're supporting that system. We're humans. And I'm going to turn it back over. And who else wants to chime in on that?
But
Well,
Catherine,
I
one
want to
thing
say,
about
I,
okay,
I want to say something. So you're saying that it's not associated with global white male supremacy. Now, when they when they fought England for their right to the Boston Tea Party or whatever that story was about. They were fighting against their own people, right? And they came here, and the people that were here already, they sat with them and they made agreements with them. And those agreements to this day have been non void. So when you look at a system that is started by some folks that were suppressed themselves, and then they came and they suppressed the people that helped them live on the land. And my grandmother, who's 101, God bless her, she said they invited them to dinner and they became their dinner. So I don't understand um, what
How
really
you got this, huh?
you're saying.
Okay. So, Trudy, you want to say anything, or Jerome, before
Well,
I
I do want to
respond
say
to
one
Gary?
thing. All of these things do apply to our causes and to the things that we want to help to happen. But I still say there's only one thing, or one thing I feel that we as a people, and I am segregating us from the others, we as a people of color have to start deciding if this is where we're going to live. We're not going to live any place better that I can see at this point. And if we're going to live here, we're going to have to protect what we have or change what we have. And the only thing that I see that's at our hands right away is the vote. And if we don't get out and vote, we're not going to have anything left. I don't see where we'll go. What will we do?
Trudy.
So if you're living here, be a part of it. I mean, we don't go out and vote. We don't do a lot of things that we should. We don't take interest in who's in office and what they do and what their positions are. We have to be a little more concerned about the things that we want and get busy doing and supporting the things that we have to.
Trudy, we did go out and vote. And that's why they are going back to the same systems. They're going back to protecting the same democratic system that they established right here in Philadelphia in the 18th century. And Gary, my whole thing about using the word white, that is the term that they're using, white supremacy. But just to me, to say, to even give it codification, to even say that they are white, if I take away that whiteness, they have nothing else over anybody else. They become humans like everyone else. Now, I understand that's the term that is used to describe um, uh, certain members of a certain ethnic group. But when I talk about, you know, who's allowed to participate in this government, in this democracy, it's a given. It has we everyone has never participated. They don't ever intend to have everyone participate. And so even though we went out and voted in this country now, they are putting in place again, they are reinstituting states' rights to go down and decide who the eligible members of that state are that can vote, and they're making it harder for everyone to vote. And they know exactly what they're doing. So, yes, if you want to say white supremacy exists, it does. I'm not going to give them that power. I'm not going to give them the word white. I'll just call it, you want to call it, I want to be the boss, fine. Because if you take away the white, there's nothing else left. We're humans. Jerome, you have anything to say?
I'll
Actually,
say one.
yeah. I've done a little bit of research on this. January 6th a year ago was an opportunity for Trump supporters to try to overthrow the government. Now, it would not have been the first time in America that there was a violent overthrow of a legitimate government. The violent overthrow of a legitimate government happened, the first one happened in 1898 in North Carolina, in Wilmington, North
Correct.
Carolina.
Correct.
And at that time, you had a prosperous black middle class in Wilmington, North Carolina. Wilmington, North Carolina was the capital of North Carolina at the time. And, black folks were well represented in government. I'm talking about up to about 40 to 50% of government, as well as Republicans, because it was about 10 years after the end at the end of the destruction of Reconstruction. White men came up with this idea that blacks were too good, too successful running the government, and they literally overthrew the government in North Carolina. And 60 black people were killed. The black population of Wilmington, North Carolina went from 56% to 18% in about a 4 or 5 days. They ran the black folks out of town so they couldn't vote, and they put in a white racist government. It happened violently there, but it also happened throughout the rest of the South. That the
But the
people,
question,
who, the black men, because black men were the only ones, the males that had the right to vote, and they just basically took it away, and
exactly,
it
that's
didn't
my
come back
point.
again until 1865.
That's my
So
point.
what?
So that's why you have to look at the whole system. That's why you have to look at what is the mindset? What is the system that is in place that they are so that they are trying so desperately to hold on to preserve. You have to go back and you have to look at who they think the eligible members should be, and the eligible members that should be on top are them. And that's the foundation, that's the founding of the country. That's what Gary's talking about, and that's what his grandmother was talking about. I agree with all of that. But voting is not really, voting is going to be a very challenging it's a very challenging a thing to do. We voted, but we're being penalized every time we vote. We're being penalized.
So where is the answer, or where is part of an answer, or where do we begin? What do we do? Just give up?
No, we can't give up. The thing is that right now, probably as we speak, Biden is in Ebenezer Church or one of those churches in the South, trying to revitalize the Voters' Right Act. The Voters' Right is just an act. Can you imagine that? That we is an act. It's not even a law. Interesting that they put forth a law that you can't harm Chinese, you can't harm transvestites, you can't harm what other group of people was it? But there was no law that he
Homosexual.
just signed for protection against blacks. That's
But
ironic. Now you That's ironic. You go on down to the South for Voters' Right Act to propose a Voters' Right Act, maybe because you want to get back in office. I don't know what the case may be, but how is it that we don't even have what they call a Voters' Right law? It's a Voters' Right
Did
Act,
we lose
and it's
Gary?
due. Yes,
well,
yes.
what are we supposed to do? Take up arms? Lay down and take?
Oh,
Well, that's what they did. They did that. They took up arms. You saw what they did, right? I mean, it wasn't like it was a cartoon,
that's why
but
blacks weren't
it
allowed to
wa-
have
but
guns.
but again, because of the fact that they assume that they're running things and they haven't had any competition, they can continue to do what they do.
Well, first of all, we have to become a part of this nation, one way or the other. I don't know what the exact answer is, but I know we have to come together and decide what we're going to do. We're going to stay here. We're going to go somewhere else. We're going to lay down and let someone step on us continuously. I mean, what we have to
No,
have some kind of plan,
we have to
and how
make
do we
them make
get
the
to that
voters
plan?
right. We have to make them a voters' right act a law. We have to
Okay,
push up on
that's
these
what we do.
black politicians. We have to push up on this guy that was that helped Biden get in office, who I haven't heard a scrimp out of, who really
Well, let's
got
find.
us out and full.
Okay, we'll find them right in this intermission. We'll be right back. Stay there, please. We're back, and I hope you're back with us because we were getting very hot there. Gary, you were finishing off a little statement you were making about what we should do about democracy. Please go on.
Okay, so is the Voters' Right Act. So we have to really seriously push up on our black politicians first, because
Mm-hmm.
we're hoping that they're feeling that their children are going to be affected by the so-called Voters' Right Act into law. I'm hoping that they take that in consideration. So we got to push up onto them on a personal note and say, hey, listen, your children are going to be affected by this. Maybe we need to hit their personal side, because what you're saying about voting is non-void.
Yeah, but
Because
Gary,
if they get rid of it, if they decide to not make it a law, and what are they gonna do? They're gonna say, okay, we're gonna reenact the Voters' Right Act again.
well,
Why
Well,
not
Gary,
make
we're
it a
that's
gonna.
what
law?
they have been doing. That's what they've been doing. That's why they've been renewing it every 25 years. Because every 25 years, they never thought they'd be the minority. But it's the eligible. They've always been a minority. But I mean, we need to change the filibuster. And all you have to do to prove my point is look at Manchin and look at Cinema. They're looking at who's in grace, who are the health, the wealth, the white, the Christian, the Protestant. Okay, that's where they're located. And if you know where they're located within that system, you can understand why the last thing they want to do is change that filibuster rule to include the vote, to putting into law everyone has the right to vote. Okay, putting it into law, the whole civil rights, the whole John Lewis thing, all the bills they're talking about now, it's Congress's duty to do that. But they don't want to override the state laws. And, that's why the Supreme Court is I believe expanding the Supreme Court is a solution. And if you have to have a
Yeah,
thousand of them on there, then have a thousand. But you've got to get rid of the Southern segregationist, that silly, whoo, I lost my train of thought. Jerome, what is that thing called
Uh,
again? The filibuster.
the filibuster. Yeah, Kathy Lee. The one thing, and I'll agree with you. The one thing that we need to get black people to do is not just show up to vote once every 4 years at the presidential level like we did in 2020. Then we have to show up for all elections. I'm talking about dog catchers, school board, especially judges. I mean, for instance, you were right, Gary, when you said Joe Biden was in Georgia, trying to get the black folks to come out and vote again because those the senators down there are up for reelection right now. One of them is, and if he loses, then you have the Republican dominated Senate again. And
But they
you don't
changed.
think,
They're never going to count them. They're changing the laws where they decide who certifies these elections. They're putting
yeah,
everything in place now. That's why they're jumping on there now saying, we, just like Al Sharpton and the black politicians or African politicians have been saying, you've got to push the voting rights law. You got to work on voting rights. They're pushing the Build Back Better. You can't build back better if everybody cannot participate, if everyone's not an eligible member of a state in a country that can vote in a democratically fair run election following the rule of law. That's the end of the story.
And
you
that's the
know,
place
in
we're
Georgia,
gonna have. That's the
I was going
place
to
we're
say
gonna
in
have.
Georgia, the
Okay,
reason we
Jerome.
don't have a black I was going to say in Georgia, the reason we don't have a black female governor is because the Secretary of State who certifies the election certified that he won. So Kathy Lee is absolutely right. We need to get there and get in those positions so that our vote does really count.
And that's a good place to start and ending our statements. That's your final wrap up. Kathy, what's yours?
My final wrap up is
Just
oh,
starting.
I think we create our own reality. So I think we need to create, change the mass reality that has been created in this country where only certain people are really considered Americans. and are considered worthy enough to be able to vote. They need to get rid of you in jail. They need to get rid of if you're non-white, if you're non-Christian. But I mean,
Uh,
welcome to America.
and welcome, Gary, with your last statement.
Uh, we gotta, we
Can
gotta, we gotta, we have to push up on these politicians. If they're the people that make the laws, and we're the people that supposed to ask, or not even ask, tell them what to do and pay their salaries, then they work for us. They don't work for
loud
themselves,
and clear,
but they're
loud and
acting
clear.
like they work for themselves. And that's the problem. We got to push up on them. We got to get a coalition to push up on these people and make them do what they're supposed to do.
Jerome, I know what you're thinking, but I want to hear it, and I'm sure the audience wants to hear it. How do you feel about this last thing?
Well, Miss Trudy, I like to say this. When I was growing up, and I'm 70 years old, so I can say that, 18-year-olds could drink in about half the country. Today, the drinking age is 21. The reason that the drinking age is 21 because 18 to 21-year-olds do not vote. They do not vote in any numbers representative of their population. And therefore, they lost the right to drink. If you don't show up and vote, hey, rights surely will be taken away, especially if you're black.
Come back again. This is not a finished subject. We'll talk about this again. In the meantime, have a blessed day.